Next, we will have our first ever panel of young adults. HAILEY, ASHLEE, and RACHAEL have all been diagnosed with FND, and they're at different stages now with their treatment and with the illness itself. And so we're really excited that they were with us today to share their experience with us. And if we give them just a second, I'll take them just a minute to unmute themselves, and if they can turn on their videos, and we'll welcome them all here with us today. And if I can too, we'll see if I can change that you can see in a different view so you can see all of the girls at the same time. So hopefully I've managed that. It's kind of a technical feat, I guess. ASHLEE, HAILEY, RACHAEL, thank you for being here with us today.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited.
We just want to maybe take a few minutes, if you would, and introduce yourselves. If we could go ahead and start with RACHAEL, and then we'll have HAILEY, and then ASHLEE.
Yeah. So hi, my name's RACHAEL. I'm 20 years old. I live in Cornwall, but I grew up in Ohio in America, so I have kind of experience with both countries. I'm currently in university. I go to Plymouth University and I study biomedical science with, I guess, a minor in research. And I hope to go on and go into academic research with genetics. Sort of things I like to do. I love to read. I love music. I play a lot of video games. And I've just recently started to try and take up sports. So I've been fencing for about 6 months now, wheelchair fencing and wheelchair basketball. So that's just a little bit about me. So thank you.
HAILEY.
Hi, I'm 18. I love to be outside. Any sort of outside activity, that's where you'll find me. I was diagnosed in early 2018 and just kind of progressed from rare, or within one day to the next few weeks, I had every single symptom on the list, and we really, I got my diagnosis within the first week, but that didn't really mean anything for a while because I was told, okay, this is what you have, see you later, bye. And then after about a year, we actually found Dr. Mewenter, who just spoke, and I did treatment with her. And as of today, I am 422 days symptom-free. And then even in that year, I'm still working on regaining stamina, but I have my life back. So, yeah.
Great. And ASHLEE.
I'm ASHLEE. I am 23 years old. I am a student at the University of Wisconsin in Madison. I actually grew up in the South and somehow found myself up here in the frozen tundra of Wisconsin. I'm studying communications. As far as what I like to do, I, like HAILEY, I love the outdoors. I love hiking, I love kayaking. Anything outside it's one of my favorite places to be. I developed FND on January 17th of 2016. I was totally fine before that, and then all of a sudden one morning I woke up and was in horrible pain and couldn't really move, and that set me on a quite a few year path of just trying to figure out what in the world was going on. I was diagnosed with FND and I received treatment almost a year ago. And since then I have been recovering. I still have symptoms on pretty much a daily basis, but I have come so far from where I was.
Thank you all so much. I'm sure that your experience can resonate with a lot of others. And we'll kind of go back, you're young adults now, but you did have it as teenagers and kind of went through some of that process, some of you at different stages. So I think that there's a lot of other youth, both girls and boys, that can definitely sympathize with some of your experiences. What was one of the hardest part of FND and your illness journey?
So for me personally, it came down to the fact that I developed FND really suddenly. I was on my way to pick up exam results from my school and I had a stroke, just sort of, randomly. And I think for me, the hardest part was accepting that there was nothing on my scans. There's no X-ray, nothing, I guess, physically wrong. And that was sort of how FND was presented to me, was there's nothing really wrong, so you just need to kind of rest, you'll get over it, that kind of thing. And I think the hardest part for me was accepting that it wasn't a broken arm. I wasn't going to get fixed in 2 weeks with a cast, and that was going to be it. It was going to be more of a lifetime kind of struggle against it. So yeah, that's definitely had a big impact on mental health, physical health, that entire triangle really. So I definitely say personally that was my biggest hurdle with it.
For me, the hardest part of FND was just the unknown. Just not knowing what is going on. The people who are supposed to tell you what is wrong with you don't know what's going on. Your family doesn't know what's going on, and so it's a lot of uncertainty for everyone involved, and that is terrifying. So the unknown definitely for me has been the hardest part and the scariest part of FND.
Understandable. Hailey, how about you?
For me, I think it was the lack of understanding in the medical community, and how that lack of understanding in the medical community just radiated out into the general public. Because I've had 15 surgeries, none of which have had to do with FND, and I even believe some of my other medical stuff have maybe been what played a role in causing my FND. And so going into FND, I was very in tune with, okay, this is how the medical system works. You get a diagnosis, and then they tell you what they're going to do to help you. And that didn't happen with FND. And I was said, like I said earlier, I was told, okay, here's this name. We're not going to tell you anything about what it is. We're just going to give you a name and send you on your way. And so it was incredibly hard to even figure out, okay, so what is going on with me? And then we were totally left on our own to try and find treatment. And the few places in the US that we researched and were like, oh, maybe this could help. Oh, maybe this could help. We didn't find any place for over a year that treated minors. And so that lack of understanding in both the medical community and then friends not understanding or any of that just really, that was probably the hardest part for me.
I can imagine it's difficult for adults to find treatment programs, and as you mentioned, the youth are even more difficult. That could be very frustrating. I'm glad you also mentioned the social aspect of it. I know, having teenagers myself, that social world is a really important part of life. And what were some of those social issues that you found, and maybe even some tips on how you navigated through that? Hailey, would you like to start us?
Yeah, so for me, I think, and I think from all the other people I've gotten in touch with FND, it seems like that peer and social aspect is very challenging because, like I was saying, there's no understanding of it, and so you go in and your friends don't know what's happening to you, and it's really easy for them to say, oh, I don't know what's happening to you, so I'm just gonna drop you like a hot potato. And while I was very lucky to have quite a few friends that stuck by me, there were also definitely people that it's your social life, your social circle gets smaller and smaller, and with my mom, became so severe that I had to withdraw from high school, and I just became very, very isolated, and that was hard. But as much as I could advocate for myself and as my parents could advocate for me to say, you know, I really need to have fun in my life and have people around me that care. And so as much as I could communicate to my friends, okay, this is what's happening to me and I need you to stick by me through this, as hard as frank as some of those conversations were, they were really important for my friends to understand.
I bet. How about Rachel? Have you found some social changes in your life as well? Or how do you cope?
Definitely changed, lots of change. um, when I first got sick, and sort of everything happened at once, I was hospitalized for a couple weeks, and literally that hospitalization was kind of what cut me off. I had a couple people come visit me in hospital, and then I had my family, and that was pretty much it. And I guess one of the things that made it quite difficult for me was I lost the ability to write, to physically write and read properly. And so kind of social media was out as well. And so for easily a year, because I took a gap year from school, I was just, it was very lonely. I had my family, but I was quite cut off. And as sort of things improved, I did start to branch out. Like I said, I found wheelchair sports. I joined a couple wheelchair teams because I'm a wheelchair user full time. And that's really helped because I've met other people that sort of have the same, you know, not the same issues, but we're all kind of in it together, if that makes sense. We all kind of have struggled with things. So that's definitely helped branching out in the disabled community. And I started a blog so I could kind of just write and get it all out of my head and kind of clear that space and hopefully help whoever comes in contact with me over the time. But those two things definitely, so branch out and kind of get it out of your head any way you feel comfortable.
That's fantastic. ASHLEE, do you have something to add? And also, you both have mentioned family. You know, maybe how does social and family then kind of interact or help?
Yeah, definitely. I think family is a huge part of the social aspect of living with FND, especially as young adults. Like we are still, and some of us when we were first started experiencing symptoms of FND, we were just starting to step out on our own and starting to experience that independence. And then all of a sudden we develop all these crazy symptoms that require us to be dependent back upon our families. And so there's almost this sense of having to restructure what you've come to understand as your family unit. And in doing that, it can be really hard on everyone involved. And I know for me personally, one of the hardest parts of that was just feeling like I was a burden, having to rely on my parents and my sister to do all of these things that I should be able to do, was really difficult for me to cope with. And so just feeling like I was a burden, I know that's a feeling that a lot of people with FND experience. That was, it was really hard. So yeah, family plays a huge role in living with FND. And like I believe HAILEY was saying, it, you have to have some conversations, and there has to be this level of understanding and mutual respect and a lot of grace to be given on both sides of the equation. So yeah, it's definitely a huge factor.
I think you mentioned really important things. And I don't think that's just even for youth. I think adults could learn a lot from that as well. HAILEY, please go ahead.
Yeah, I'll just add to that for me, it was my mom as a single parent. She totally had to withdraw from her job because I required 24/7 care. And that was very challenging for us. But I also just wanted to encourage everyone out there watching this that the relationships that do stick by you, they can get such, as hard as it is, it can strengthen the relationships so much. And I think that I've found that my relationship with my mom and with my brother and with my whole family and friends, they're so much stronger and way more authentic than they were before. I was kind of living in a little bit of like this surface, a little, not totally shallow, but almost a little shallow, just day to day, not really caring about like what the other person was actually going through. And through this experience, what I've learned and what helped me through it was being able to say, I am really struggling today. And like I was saying earlier, and like the other girls have said, like you have to advocate for yourself and say, this is what I need today. And that helped me a lot with my family and like Ashley was saying, all the grace, because FND is so hard.
I want to just grab a couple of the questions that are coming through, because there's some really good ones. One question is about the grieving process. Did any of you feel like that you kind of had to go through that grieving process of an old life? And do you have any tips or any ideas on maybe how others can get through that, or youth? Yeah. Rachel, I see a nod in your head.
Yeah. I definitely feel like that grief is a recurring thing, personally, because it's almost like all those kinds of dreams and things you had as like a 13, 14-year-old and kind of just starting out, and you're looking for colleges, you're looking for your next kind of big thing. All of those leave, they all kind of go away for a while when you get sick. And it's that whole kind of, what helped me feel better is it'll come back. You will realize those dreams and you will get to do those things again. It might be in a different way, it might take longer, but if you really want it, you can find your own route into something that you love. And every once in a while, I mean, I still have those days where I wake up and I'm like, it's not fair. Why am I like this? Why did this happen to me? But then it's like, you have to remember, everyone has bad days. Let yourself feel those bad days. Let yourself have a junk food day and Netflix and sleep, or go for a walk, or go pet a dog or cat or whatever reptile you want. Just, you have to let yourself feel that, otherwise it'll never leave you. And it'll always feel like a weight if you don't let yourself kind of take it, acknowledge it, and let it go those days. And I think that's really important to remember, that everyone has those days, even people that aren't chronically ill and things. Everyone has those days where you have that imposter syndrome, like, do I really deserve what I'm doing? And you just have to acknowledge it and let it go as best as you can.
Thank you. I think that's really helpful. HAILEY.
Something I'd add to that, and another question I see here of asking how much school I missed. For me, a huge part of the grieving process was missing school and withdrawing. I wasn't allowed on campus the first day of my senior year of high school, which was incredibly hard. And I sat in the audience at what was supposed to be my high school graduation, which was, I mean, out of all the days of FND, that was one of the hardest days. So I think for me, the grieving process was letting myself feel all the pain, because if I just tried to push it away and distract myself from it, which I definitely did a lot, but also having times of, this is really hard, and realizing and letting yourself feel that helps you work through it, I think. And then also coming up with other things of, I couldn't force my way into getting to walk at my graduation, but I could come up with, I'm going to have my own party. And so I think being creative and coming up with your own ways of what you can do to any things you miss that you physically can't, or for whatever reason can't come up with a replacement for all of those things. And then just also to answer this question super quick for me, I didn't integrate back into school. I actually got my GED and have now applied to college, and I'm going to be going to college in the fall. But a huge thing I learned with FND is it doesn't affect your intellectual ability at all. And so when I was in the midst of it and I couldn't write and I couldn't form words some days, I felt like I'd lost all my education, and I hadn't. I was still as smart as I was the day before I got FND. It's more of a cognitive thing.
Great, thank you. Ashley, do you have any insight to add? Or you've attended college, correct? Both with FND symptoms and going through that and after. Have you found a difference there, or tips that maybe you had?
I was actually a freshman in college when I woke up and my symptoms were there. And so I too had to withdraw from school. And I was living in a dorm at the time in North Carolina. My family had moved to Wisconsin. So not only was I just starting to experience all these symptoms, but I was withdrawing from my freshman year, and I was moving up north in the middle of winter, which was not fun. So I took a gap year, and as I was getting used to all of my symptoms and just what it looks like in this new normal, so to speak. And then I slowly started to take a couple of online courses. I think I started with 2 online courses just to give me something to do, because at the time I was really struggling with grieving the depression and just trying to work through all the emotions that I was feeling at the time. And so I reached this point where I was just really tired of laying on the couch all day long, every day, doing nothing, and I wanted to do something. So I started taking part-time online classes and things that I enjoyed. And then I applied to UW, and I was accepted, and I have been going there. I'm actually my senior year. I'm graduating in May next month. And it's been crazy. There were days where I wasn't able to walk, wasn't able to drive. I was a student on campus, and my mom was literally pushing me from class to class in my wheelchair. And then more recently, since my treatment last semester, this past year, I have relearned to drive, relearned to walk. And so this semester I was able to get myself to and from classes. One of the biggest things that I had to learn was to give, we were talking about grace earlier, and to give myself all the grace, to know that it's okay, to be okay with myself for needing to sit and rest as I'm walking to my next class, or when I get home from school, maybe take a nap if it's been a long day, and then work on my homework. Just learning to create those boundaries and listen to my body to figure out what do I need in this moment, and to be okay with giving myself that.
Fantastic. That actually answers one of the questions that we have about fatigue and how managing that before it gets too bad. And congratulations on graduating. That's fantastic. And I am amazed by all of your courage to keep persevering and going forward. And I know too from some of the conversations that we had and talking beforehand that you all have maintained some very positive, despite the setbacks, kind of trying to keep that positivity. Haley, I think you even mentioned once about how you made it in your routine to have fun, and that was part. Can you maybe share a little bit what your family did to help?
Yeah, so the way that it worked for my family was my brother, who he's 5 years older than me. He was already out of the house and had moved on with his life, but he lived about an hour away from us. He would 2 days out of the week, he'd come down, and one day was purely, okay, so he just watched me. And we hung out in the house. It was so that my mom could get a break, so that she could get research done, so that she could take her one shower a week, because she couldn't even take a shower because my seizures came so intensely and so frequently. But then the second day, he'd spend the night, and then the second day he was here, I got to wake up and I got to say, what do I want to do today? And of course, within reason, because there are limitations with FND, and there's limitations with all things in life. But whether it was, let's go for a drive around the lake, or I want to be outside today, or on a hard day, it was, I want to marathon the entire Harry Potter series. Whatever it was, my family made a way to have at least one day a week of, we're not talking about treatment options, we're not talking about anything hard, we're simply taking the entire day to do whatever you want to do. Of course, again, within reason. I couldn't wake up and say, let's go to Paris, but within reason, yeah.
That's fantastic. Rachel, what about you? And we actually have a question, so maybe you can kind of put them together. You mentioned music, and someone asked that you like music as coping. Do you use headphones, speakers, and do you find the differences between them? Maybe you can work that in.
So music has always been a massive part of, I love music. I cannot sing. I can't do anything creative. But I love music, and especially the year my gap year, I spent a lot of time by myself in the house, sort of trying to get myself, I would force myself to try and read, I would force myself to try and write. At the time I had a really severe stutter, which I think I saw a question about that as well, speech issues. Yes, definitely. I couldn't speak for, it was easily 2.5 months that I couldn't get it out. Every single word I would stutter on, just bad. But music just, I don't know, it just makes you feel really, it made me feel really centered. It made me feel really grounded, that you could put headphones on and ignore the tinnitus, or you could put your speakers on and you could hear the music from across the room, but like, I didn't have to go to the speaker. I didn't have to get up to be able to move to do that. That was something I could do on my own, completely, from sitting down or from across the room. And it gave me a weird sense of independence, that I had control over that, and I could choose what I listened to. I mean, there are days I'm sure other people have done it too, or if you're having a bad day, you listen to sad music and you're like, you kind of let it all out. And then if you're having a good day, you listen to happy music and pop and rock or whatever you listen to. I use a combination of speakers and headphones. The main difference for me is I get quite bad tinnitus at times, and I have a heart problem as well that causes, like, it's called pulsatile tinnitus, where I can hear my heartbeat really loud in my ears and stuff a lot, and it drowns like everything out. So I use headphones to kind of cover that a lot, and it definitely helps in falling asleep and things like that. I'll wear wireless earbuds, and it's a pain to find them in the morning, but it helps me fall asleep. And speakers I use primarily, like if I'm across the room, like if I have to be in bed, but maybe I have a headache or something like that, I can put it on really low in the background. And it does help me kind of chill out. I listen to literally every kind of music. I'm pretty sure I have a song from every genre. It's whatever kind of makes you feel good in the moment. I mean, it's just
That's
whatever
great.
You.
We're kind of running out of a little bit of time, so I want to hit on a couple little topics too, and there are a few more questions quickly, because we've kind of talked about it before, though. I think you had some really good medical tips. And so if we could just maybe each of you give maybe a best tip that you found with working with your medical professional that comes to mind? Rachel, would you like to start?
Sure, yeah. So I think one of the main things to remember when you're going to see, especially if you're going to see a new doctor or a doctor maybe that you've not had a best experience with, and you're on your way, you're in the car or on the train, and you're kind of having those anxieties like, will they listen to me? Will they believe me? Will they actually take me seriously? We're all people, we're all humans, and all of our experiences are extremely unique. But you have to remember that doctor's a person, and what kind of makes us all humans and not robots is that compassion, that empathy. And you have to trust that they wouldn't be doctors or nurses or medical professionals if they didn't have that empathy to help people. And I think that's a massive thing to remember, that just try to remember that they're there to help you for the most part. It's really difficult because I've had bad experience with doctors and things, but you have to go into each appointment fresh. You can't hold a grudge. And make sure, when we talk about advocacy and things, I was a very quiet person in my appointments, and I still find myself just being a yes person, like, sure, I'll go do this test, I'll go do this, I'll go to this specialist, I'll go here, we're there and everywhere. When in reality, I don't agree with what's going on, or I don't fully understand why they're making me do some of this stuff. But you can't feel guilty that you didn't stand up for yourself, or you didn't let your opinion be heard. There's going to be another appointment. There's going to be another chance. You can email your doctor, ring them, do something to make yourself feel better, but don't feel guilty. Don't feel guilty, because everyone has bad appointments. It's okay. It happens.
Great advice. HAILEY.
Yeah, I think for me, I got a lot of, I went to a doctor's appointment and no one believed me, and that was very challenging. And even before I presented with FND, I had a long medical history, and you have to share your medical history at the beginning of every appointment. And that was both physically and emotionally draining for me to relive that whole experience. And so a lot of times I really liked it if my mom or my brother or whoever was with me at the appointment could kind of summarize my medical history in the beginning, but doctors didn't really like that. They wanted to hear directly from me. And so if I was having a bad day and I did need to say, it's going to be too emotionally draining for me to actually tell you everything that's happened to me, I told them, I would tell them at the beginning of the appointment, I said, I will talk to you and answer all of your questions, but as far as this beginning medical history part goes, I've asked my mom or my brother to do it, and that communication part for me. And then I also found a lot of doctors tried to play my FND off as mental health, and oh, you have PTSD from your other medical issues, that's all this is. Oh, you have anxiety, that's all this is. And so I tried to be as real as possible, but also show as much positivity as possible when I was in an appointment. So for instance, at one point during my FND, I needed to have a feeding tube. So I had an NG tube placed, and I had a feeding tube bag, and I had my friends come over, and we drew inspiration from The Fault in Our Stars and wrote, "It's a good life, HAILEY Ray," on the feeding tube bag. And I brought that feeding tube bag with me to every doctor's appointment because it was what was providing my feeds. And I was like, look, see, I am actually, like, I am positive. I do have hope. It goes away. I do get negative, but this is not all mental health. And so it's important for your medical health providers to know all the bad parts and how negative it can be, because that shows them what they need to help, but it's also important to show them that you can be positive.
That's great. Thank you. Ashley, did you have anything that you would add to that?
As far as just like a practical tip that my family and I found to be super helpful when we were going to like every doctor that you can possibly imagine, trying to figure out what's going on. It kind of goes along with what HAILEY was saying with regards to give a medical history, is we just created, we sat down and opened up Microsoft Word and just created a timeline of when my symptoms started, what symptoms were there, and then like over time, what symptoms developed, what was going on around that time. Like we just created this in-depth timeline that would not only help us as we were explaining the history to doctors, but it was something that we could also give the doctors, and they could look at it as we were talking about it, or they could look at it later. And then we did the same thing for symptoms, as we just created a massive list of every possible symptom that I had had, whether I had it daily or whether I had it once and it was gone. Like we just put it all on there because we didn't know what was important, what wasn't important, what might be important. And so it's just something that was very practical. It takes a little bit of time, but it was something that like I found to be so helpful for everyone.
Great. Well, and you guys have all given some great advice and shared your experience. We really appreciate it. The one last question we want to ask you is, what advice would you give, or what, we know you've learned so many great lessons. You obviously have come out of this and you're going forward are amazing women. But what would you like to maybe share that you wish someone would have shared with you back at the beginning of your journey, or something that you learned about yourself perhaps that you'd like to share? Hailey, let's start with you.
For me, I wanted to know that there was hope. And I mean, I'm living proof that there's hope. So for everyone watching this, there is hope. That was my biggest thing. I wanted to know that I could get through this.
Fantastic. Rachel.
Just sort of the idea that nobody knows exactly what they're doing 100% of the time, and it's okay to have bad days and to relapse. And as long as you pick yourself back up and you reach out and let people know that it's a bad time, you're stronger than you know, and you will go around it.
Fantastic. Thank you. And ASHLEE.
For me, the biggest lesson that I learned was that you can hold both pain and joy in the same hand, that the two are not mutually exclusive, that we were created with feelings woven into our very DNA, and so feelings are good and our emotions are good, even though they don't always feel the best. But it's so important to sit with those emotions and to process it in order to be able to take that step towards healing, but also knowing that just because everything is really crappy now, knowing that it's okay to find joy in the pain as well, that pain and joy are not mutually exclusive. You can have them both at the same time.
That's beautiful. Thank you. We really appreciate you being here, and we appreciate the time that you give. And again, there's some questions in there that you can maybe respond to typing. If you do see some that, especially if they're directed towards each of you, if you feel comfortable, please feel free to answer some of those questions. So thank you very much.